Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're jumping back into Venom with another dark web tie-in, and fortunately for us, it's the last one. But from here going forward in the Venom series, we're getting to see how this secret symbiote war continues, along with following key moments in Eddie's transformations, as well as watching Dylan try to figure this whole thing out, with him trying to save his father Eddie, as well as work on his own daddy issues. So yeah, there's a lot to pick apart moving forward. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so when we jump back in, we pick up just after what we'd seen with Dylan declaring war and letting Bedlam know that he'll save his father even if he has to kill him to do it. Because for Dylan, he believes his role as Codex, the Chainbreaker, is the answer to freeing his father Eddie Brock, and perhaps even himself. But like we'd seen, this is where Kamala had dropped in. And for Kamala, she really doesn't know the ins and outs of what's going on. She more or less just overheard Dylan calling the big red guy father, but again, she really doesn't know who Bedlam is or what's going on with Eddie Brock. But for Kamala, she just wants to keep Venom from killing this guy. But with her showing up, Dylan tells her that he's not Venom, but rather that he's Codex. But Kamala lets him know that she remembers his voice from the last time that they met. And with her saying this, it's a reference to the 2022 Miss Marvel and Venom issue 1, which was part of a series of Miss Marvel team-ups that began with Miss Marvel and Wolverine, then Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, to later then put them all together in the Miss Marvel and Venom issue. But at that time, it was the two of these guys meeting, with Kamala realizing and more or less figuring out that inside of Venom now it's a kid. And during that time, there's a point where Kamala had mentioned that one thing she had learned early as a hero is that everything isn't always black and white, whether at one point the hero used to be the bad guy or vice versa. Because across the board you have differences in methodology and various shades of morality. And Kamala had learned at one point, for these reasons, sometimes you have to look past the scary teeth as best as you can, because there's all types of heroes out there. But at this point, going back to the present, Kamala sees the eye gouging and hand chopping is a bit much for any hero, so she has a hard time giving Codex a pass on this one. And it doesn't help when Dylan says that he's gonna cut out Bedlam's heart next. And when Kamala sees Normie, the Red Goblin, who is unmistakably a kid in a symbiote, then she's just like, okay, now that's just insanely irresponsible, giving a symbiote to this child and making him your sidekick. But with Kamala wanting to talk all this out, Bedlam, thankfully, it's like, nah, I ain't trying to hear that. And from here, he quickly goes back into kill mode and going after Dylan. Because after all, Dylan took his eye and his hand. And again, Bedlam doesn't really know who Dylan is, at least not to the full extent, because of all of his recent mind manipulation. But as Bedlam goes in for the attack, Kamala quickly hits him with the embiggen hand mush, while also letting Bedlam know that she can hold her own. But when Kamala grabs Bedlam, he chomps down on that hand, and right then and there, Kamala's like, I'm done. And she throws Bedlam towards the Hudson River, which is one way to handle it after all that tough talk. But when she does this, Dylan's like, yo, that's not safe, because it's like you're throwing Bedlam towards more people that he can harm. But Kamala assures Dylan that with throwing Bedlam into the Hudson River, this will just buy them enough time to regroup, so that by the time Bedlam gets to land, she'll meet him when he resurfaces. But then it's here where Codex stumbles for a moment, and we find out that Dylan can't exactly hold this form for too long. Neither can he hold the Necro Sword for too long. And really with seeing this, and this is just my thoughts, but with seeing this new detail, I think it works for a couple reasons. Because for one, in the past, it helped keep Dylan's transformation a surprise, leading up to his reveal. And also, for the time being, it puts a bit of a limiter on Dylan's most powerful state, which I'm cool with for the time being. But hopefully, at some point in the future, I'm hoping that when Dylan gets older, he'll either be able to control this form completely for as long as he wants, or we'll see the situation where Dylan continues to evolve into newer, more capable versions of himself, similar to what we've seen with Eddie. Though in Eddie's case, his transformations are more of a different mind state, because in Eddie's case, as far as from what we know at this point, the separation between Meridius and the others is more so knowledge and experience. And I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing the same for Dylan, but of course with his own twist and destination for his final form. But as it stands right now for Dylan, being Codex and wielding the Necro Sword, it's something that he can only do in brief intervals, at least for the time being. But with Dylan going back to his regular form, Kamala is surprised that he's just a kid. And I believe before she only had her suspicions, but with her seeing him now, she knows for certain. But with her helping Dylan gather himself here, they quickly realize that the Red Goblin is taken off. But then it's here where we go over to Bedlam, who's a much better swimmer than Kamala had assumed. But also with Bedlam, making his way out of the Hudson River. We find that Meridius is right there waiting for him. And with Eddie's recent transformation, this is the first time as Bedlam that he is meeting Meridius. And it's kind of nuts to see this unfold, because with us recently seeing the process that converted Eddie into Bedlam, we're now given a fresh look at the steps of Meridius manipulating Bedlam, with the advantage of Meridius also having the memory of knowing what it was like to be Bedlam at this time. And it's kind of trippy seeing these moments unfold and tie into the larger narrative. But with Meridius meeting Bedlam here, Bedlam does recognize him from his remaining memories, and Bedlam also remembers the Garden of Time, which we'll later see him visit very violently at some point in his near future. But Bedlam expresses now to Meridius that he wants to go back to the garden to kill Meridius and take his place. But again, Meridius knows how all this plays out, because he's been Bedlam. He knows Bedlam's gonna try, and he knows Bedlam's gonna fail, and he even knows the conversation after, where he tells Bedlam to think of it like a game, like we'd seen in issue 10, because Meridius has already seen all of this. He remembers it. And with him coming back to this time to meet Bedlam, Meridius is really just priming him for that moment. And he does so by first restoring Bedlam's hand, while letting Bedlam know that he doesn't have to wait to return to the garden to be fully restored. But even with Meridius helping Bedlam in this very volatile state, where Bedlam still wants to go after Meridius, which like we'd seen in issue 10, he eventually will do. But with Meridius restoring Bedlam piece by piece, and for the time being only doing his hand, he tells Bedlam that he'll get his eye back when he's ready to come back to the garden for real. But also as it stands, Meridius doesn't want Bedlam creating any paradoxes, because when Bedlam arrives in the garden, he's gotta have 2 hands and 2 eyes. So when Meridius believes that Bedlam's ready, he assures him that he'll get that eye back. But with Bedlam trying to attack Meridius now and just slashing through him, to no avail, Meridius gets ready to leave, but before he does, his last words to Bedlam are about Dylan having a sword, so why doesn't Bedlam? And with hearing this, Bedlam's more or less like, well, yeah, you're right. And shortly after Meridius leaves, Bedlam turns his recently fixed right hand into his chainsaw, which is him taking the advice of Meridius, but with doing so, going off on the deep end. And it almost feels like symbiotes with chainsaws is a thing that's going on now. But with Bedlam doing this, it's here where we now see where Normie had ran off to, with him ditching both Dylan and Kamala to go after Bedlam. And for Normie, with him going up against Bedlam and being the first one to get there, he's able to web up Bedlam briefly, and I mean very briefly, since Normie's a lot faster. But quickly Normie finds out that webbing up a symbiote chainsaw is just like webbing up any other chainsaw, as Bedlam uses it to get out. But at this point, with Dylan and Kamala making their way there, Dylan tells Normie we can take it from here, and again for Bedlam. With him hearing Dylan say we, the first thing he's thinking about is the Venom symbiote, and how Bedlam is no longer a we since being separated. But also at this time, with this still taking place in the middle of Dark Web, we get your demon-possessed playground equipment that steps into all this, which then causes Kamala and Normie to hold that off while Dylan takes care of Bedlam. But it's here with Dylan getting this one-on-one time with his dad, and really at this point Dylan and the Venom symbiote, where instead of going for the kill like before, they're telling Eddie how he was there for every symbiote in the universe except for the one he didn't bother with, and then in Dylan's case, Eddie was going across the galaxy saving every soul, but not so much checking in back home on his own son. And eventually this leads to Dylan and the Venom symbiote pulling back out the Necro Sword and seeming to sever that right hand again, while telling Bedlam that we are gonna end the pain right here. Because for Dylan, he thinks, he's not sure, but he thinks that killing Bedlam will free him too. And there's only one way to be sure. But before Dylan can follow this through, Madeline Pryor shows up and she whisks Bedlam away. But when this happens, you can kind of see what I'm talking about, with Bedlam having that right hand back again. So like, I'm not sure if he's supposed to have it in the last panel or what's really the case with that. Because though it's unclear, you could also say that Meridius showed Bedlam how to bring the garden to him as far as getting his hand back, because Bedlam does bring back the chainsaw in the Dark Web finale. But again, it's not really clear with how it's done. But now at this point, with Bedlam gone, Kamala lets Dylan know that she heard everything he said. And even with Dylan being upset right now, she lets him know that perhaps it's a good thing that his father got away, because Dylan really doesn't know what would have happened. But even still, Kamala goes on to tell Dylan that it doesn't mean that he should turn a blind eye to what's going on either. But really it's from here where they split up, and Dylan tells Kamala to take care of the demons and all the chaos going on, with it being a distraction for something bigger, while they take care of his dad. But in the grand scope, all of this takes us to the conclusion of Dark Web, since Jean at this point has given Madeline the memories that she's wanted, which had then caused Madeline to no longer want this to continue. But with Madeline wanting this to stop, Chasm didn't. So now part of her plan against Chasm is to release Bedlam. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.